Here's a riddle. How do you build native cross-platform mobile applications quickly without having to rewrite code and hire consultants at a huge cost? Titanium from Appcelerator. Called the easy button for mobile application development, it allows you to focus more on what's important, getting product out the door. Join the more than 1.5 million active developers who have created over 13,000 apps at www.appcelerator.com. Hello, everybody! Welcome to Untethered.tv, where we have casual conversations with mobile rock stars. I love TV. I love mobile. I love movies, and I love streaming video, as you can probably tell simply by watching this or wherever you're listening to. And what I love about it is that I can now take it with me wherever I go. There are many services out there that allow you to watch videos like YouTube, videos like, MLB.com allows me to stream my ball games on all these devices, including my television set. But they're all limited. And what we're seeing is a great industry arriving around pushing content, live content, to the devices that you carry in your pocket, your iPad, your BlackBerry, your iPhone, and then to your television set. And with me today is Mark Hyland, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing for a company in Canada, actually in Toronto, called QuickPlay Media. And he's going to explain what these guys are doing and how they're revolutionizing this little piece of the industry, which is pushing broadcast quality and pushing media to these devices. So Mark, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit of insight about what QuickPlay is doing. And, kudos. I love the fact that you're Canadian. As I'm a Canadian, a very proud supporter of what's going on. So, Mark, welcome. Welcome to Untether.
Thank you very much.
So let's get right into this and talk about what does QuickPlay do. Hopefully I was somewhat close, but maybe you could give a description about what QuickPlay is and what you guys do.
We'd be happy to. So QuickPlay is a company focused in the mobile video space, and we really focus on getting great quality premium video to wireless portable devices. So I think a huge development in the last year has been the iPad, and then the advent from that of all kinds of tablet devices. And we really see tablets as being instrumental and key in terms of TV watching in the future. So our background is on the mobile side. So we actually started back in 2004, when you had to be a bit of a dreamer to imagine that video would work on...
What was around in 2004 to inspire that?
Well, there was a Nokia device that played video, and pretty soon after that, there was the Motorola Razor, which sold millions and millions of devices, and it could stream video, it could play downloadable video. So that's those are the devices that we got our start back in the day, as it were, with initial customers like Rogers and Telus and Bell in Canada, and then down in the States, guys like Cricket and so on. So we basically started the company in order to help remove the barriers for people that wanted to get their video out into these devices. We realized that the market was very small at the beginning,
yes.
But we felt like all the trends in terms of mobile. We felt that the huge convenience factor of the mobile device would overcome, the quality issues and other things like that. And over time, we were convinced that the networks would get faster, that the devices would get bigger, and that the overall customer experience would get better and better. So we started the company to try to figure out, okay, we were almost thinking ahead till 2011 and sort of saying, okay, in a time when this is commonplace, what are the big issues going to be? And so we clearly had to figure out how to make a platform that could deliver video to lots of different kinds of devices over lots of different kinds of networks. And that's what we set out to build all those years ago.
So, I mean, 2004 was such a different. I don't want to dwell on the past, but 2004 was such a different time, because when I ask entrepreneurs about the kind of the moment that pushed them into mobile, most of them say, well, the launch of the iPhone. Not only that, the launch of iTunes or the App Store really cemented this industry as such a massive opportunity. But you guys are out there in 2004. And you have a unique background. I think all of you guys do, but you do. You worked for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC. So, really, what you were doing back then was at the forefront of streaming technology, anyways. And this was coming onto the web. So that must have been an early indication of the way, at least the way you saw things going, and it must have shaped your view of where video was going to end up.
Yeah, I mean, one can sort of look back at their, career in hindsight and start to see the themes. And for me, I've been lucky enough to be involved in media where technology is really creating some new possibility or having some new impact. So, I was in magazines in the early 90s when desktop publishing completely revolutionized the creation of magazines and the economics of doing that. The advent of the web obviously was, and still is creating huge changes in the news business and the whole entertainment business. At CBC, I was lucky enough to look at all kinds of new platforms, everything from the web itself to streaming video on broadband to ITV. We did some work with set-top boxes with interactive TV. And in 2004, I was involved with the launch of the HD TV service. So I definitely had an interest in how new platforms and new technologies changed existing media and gave them new possibilities and created opportunities and threats and all sorts of things. So it made sense to me when I sat down with Wayne and the other folks at QuickPlay that in time this would be a really, really key area. And I guess what got me convinced was just looking at the stats, and they were evident even back in those days, where you essentially saw that the voice revenue that wireless carriers were getting was starting to tail off. It was getting already back then really competitive. And so what carriers were starting to look at and others in the industry were starting to look at was the data traffic that was on the network as a whole new set of revenue opportunities. And the data, of course, for a long time was driven largely by SMS, by text messages, but we could see that there would be a mobile internet. We imagined over time that there would be a lot of mobile video running on the networks. And so therefore we could kind of imagine, all right, well, in a world where this is commonplace, what are the types of things we need to do? And so we set about building a really good platform. Our platform we call Open Video, and it takes the content in, it manages it. We have a content management system, and then it distributes and publishes it out to various applications. So we really haven't changed the business plan or the vision of QuickPlay for these 7 years. It's been more or less the same idea. Of course, we couldn't have foreseen exactly that there would be an iPhone or a Droid X or an
iPad,
Galaxy tablet or an iPad or but we knew generally that these things were coming.
So it's let me ask you bluntly: are we witnessing such a massive shift from set-top boxes like television? Is mobile, when it comes to video, a disruptive source for this? Well,
there's a lot to say on that. So I think there's a couple disruptions. One is it's IP video in general. So you've got a TV infrastructure that has existed for 60 years, delivering analog NTSC television. And that's been as of the 70s highly influenced by cable and other sorts of multi-system operators, by IPTV operators and satellite. And then now you've got digital HDTV broadcast whether it's broadcast terrestrially or whether it's delivered through a cable or a satellite provider or an IPTV provider. So lots of change, but then essentially the internet's now grown up to the point where you can get a great video experience over the internet. Mm-hmm. So you have this sort of over-the-top phenomenon where companies like Netflix and Amazon and Google TV and so on and so forth are delivering those experiences. And there's a great debate in the industry about what the ultimate effect of those will be. But we sort of look at it as it's a sign of maturity of these IP networks that they can deliver a good quality video experience. And I think there will be elements of elements of the over-top experience that are adopted by cable companies and others, and vice versa. So the other big revolution, I think, is the tablet, and I do think that we're witnessing one of those pivot points where I think as of now you're going to start to see a rapid shift in the development of TV services specifically for tablets. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly our vision that there will be more TV consumption on tablets than there is today on PCs, for example, and that really ultimately there will be two screens. There'll be the screen at home, and you may have made a number of screens at home, but fundamentally there's a big screen on the wall, and then there's a screen you take with you. And we think that the screen you take with you is the tablet. And we think there'll be a high amount of usage right in the home when people are, just reaching to the coffee table and picking up a cool interface and being able to get the content that they want on their tablet.
I spoke with Tom Hearn, who's the CFO for the Score Media, and he said something that was really interesting to me, which was, two things. One, that for sporting events, people in particular are not going to give up their 52-inch or 60-inch sporting screen, so to speak. Right? You're watching a football game in HD. It's a drastically different experience to bring that down to the tablet. So you're always going to go to your highest def device, which is usually the home screen. But when you're traveling or when you're out, the game has started or something has started and you want to see it in real time, that's when you start to use the smaller device. Until you get to the big screen. And he also said, which is very interesting, that he sees a point in time in the next few years where advertising on the mobile side will outstrip advertising on the television side, at least for them. Is that something that you look at when you're looking at what you're doing, and these large providers have to start creating content or modifying their content for these devices? Do you think that they're even considering how they're going to make money off of this right now, or is this just something that they have to do?
Well, I think everyone's always obviously got an eye on the bottom line, and one of the questions about mobile video for a long time is how are people making money from it? And lots of people have gone out with it as an incremental service that you can buy. If you're a wireless customer, you can pay another $5, $10, $15 and get a video service. So the question of economics is always around. I mean, I think that mobile in general is generating revenue in lots of different ways, and I think mobile TV will ultimately have a similar revenue model as traditional TV does today, in that there will be a good portion of free TV that's supported by advertising. There'll be a blend that's both advertising and subscription, and there'll be some high-end stuff that's just subscription or pay-per-view. Yeah. So I don't definitely subscribe to the idea that everything will be free and ad-supported. I just don't think you can create amazing programming purely on an ad-supported model, yeah, especially with the fragmentation that everyone's facing today. And
the choice, true, right? How do you get found, right?
Exactly. So discovery becomes a huge issue, and we've chosen to focus at QuickPlay on premium content. So we're talking about full episodes and movies and sporting events, live sporting events, things that people are typically willing to spend money on. Yeah. So, and that's partly just because the nature of our market mobile video was too small for a long time to support advertising. There just simply wasn't the volume. We did the math a couple years ago, and the entire business was, in the millions of dollars a month. Now it's grown, but it's still subscriptions and direct payments are going to have to play a big role for, I think, years to come. So I think that sporting events, though, it raises a bunch of interesting opportunities. I do think that there's a huge opportunity for complementary content. So when someone's sitting at home watching on that big screen, they may well have a tablet, at their side, and they may be using Twitter to talk to their friends or comment on the game. They may be getting additional stats. They may be looking at another game that is sort of occupying their secondary attention while the main event's going on the screen.
Yeah.
So we have done some research on some of our video services, and there's an amazing amount of usage in the home where one would presume there are other screens and better screens, but because of that crazy convenience of the mobile device, it's right there. People are using that mobile device instead of the big TV.
See, it just seems that it's a good sit back experience, certainly on the for the mobile device, a tablet, to be able to complement a television show. And we're starting to see a lot of that happening right now, where there's components of the television show that you can actually get access on your tablet based on where it is on the television show, which is pretty great. It's that blending of TV and mobile. But when you kind of think about this, go back to a point earlier that you made about obviously you guys focus on the premium content. A lot of complaints, I would say, around cable companies are that I have 780 channels that are sitting there, but I'm only interested in 9, and live Major League Baseball, and because I'm a Canadian, live hockey. Are we witnessing, because of what's going on with the tablets and the mobile side and what you guys are doing, are we witnessing the start of that like all I want is HBO. I just want to spend $9 a month on HBO. I want to spend $15 a month on MLB.TV, and that's my television package. Are we witnessing the beginning of that kind of hyper customization, or is that still so far away?
Well, I think we have more and more choice, all of us, right? I mean, there has been certainly lots written about cord cutting and so on, and I think some will try it and like it, some will try it and come back to their provider. I think I think there are some amazing economics when you do bundle things together, and I think there's a huge amount of consumer value in taking advantage of those bundling economics. And so, if it's so precise that it's just those two things that you need and you can get them, cheaply, we should expect consumers to be rational and go and find the best deal, right?
Yep.
And everyone in the industry kind of has to respond to that and respond to the additional choice that's out there. But I have to believe that a lot of consumers are still going to want a broad range of content, much like they get today, with the added, I think, proviso that they're going to expect to want to watch it whenever they want,
mm-hmm.
on whatever screen they want.
Okay.
And so I think a lot of the exciting developments in the TV business are looking at some of the major providers out there, whether it's cable or IPTV or the Netflix of the world, taking their offerings cross-platform and figuring out how to offer a great value to consumers. So, cable is typically purchased on a household basis. Mobile devices are typically very individual and very personal, mm-hmm. although, tablets may be somewhere in between. So I think there's a whole bunch of interesting possibilities there in terms of, providers offering packages on a household basis and so on and so forth. So, bundling is a powerful thing. I mean, the fact that you might be able to get, your wireless phone service, or your internet access or whatever, like those are pretty powerful values.
Yep.
And, I think it's going to be very interesting because the consumer is going to have more choice. And I think there's going to be a lot of developments in terms of new applications and new services we can take advantage of. But I do think that there's a lot of value that can be offered by the incumbent video service providers.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't discount them. They certainly have the relationships and the pipes to be able to provide the content and the advertising infrastructure to be able to provide that content at a discounted rate. And you brought up a great point, obviously, about the evolution of this industry. I'm thinking maybe 5 steps ahead, where it's customized and tailored, and I pay a premium for just the services that I want. But it wasn't so long ago that VCRs were in active use, or even PVRs were in active use, and maybe the first revolution was time shifting. So that I could watch whatever, I could watch a show that was on 8 Eastern, but I could watch it at 11 p.m. Eastern because it's now on at 8 Pacific. So, and then it became, on demand, video on demand services from the cable companies. And maybe this is just that next extension beyond what they do on the website already. And so it's a natural progression, wouldn't it be?
I do. I've believed that for a long time. I mean, essentially, if you look at the history of TV, it's always progressed towards more choice and more functionality. And so, with cable, it was, high quality signals, even if you were behind a hill somewhere, and more and more and more choice to the point where you find yourself today. And then with VCRs, it started to be time shifting. The TiVo and other sorts of personal video recorders only added to that. Now it's okay. It's going to be easier and easier to move content around on the screens, or just to reach the nearest screen and have stuff work for you.
Yeah.
And it may be in the not too distant future, and you can already more or less do this in some ways. But it may be that you have a device in your pocket that essentially is the TV brain, and that device powers whatever screen you choose, including perhaps its own small screen.
Yeah.
And the other huge development, I think, is what's known as cloud-based services, essentially just internet served content, because the networks are fast enough and the devices are able to render stuff in real time. We just think there's a whole bunch of functionality that can be offered in the cloud, which in many ways will free customers from having to fiddle with different devices and plug stuff in and transfer files themselves and so on and so forth, because you'll essentially just log into your service and get your content. Your bookmarks and favorites and subscriptions will all be there. Your movies that you've rented will be there. The movies you've purchased will be in a locker in the cloud. So I think those are significant developments, and ones where, I can't say we sort of predicted this by any stretch years ago when we started the company, but as it happens, the way we've sort of gone about building the business as a managed service with content in the cloud and so on and so forth, we've ended up in a really neat spot where we can actually help companies deliver those services.
It's pretty amazing. So, jumping over to QuickPlay and really talking about that for a second, because there must be a challenge. First of all, where do you, for a good sense, where do you fit in? Because there's a lot of services out there, like certainly even Apple TV. We talk about transferring device or device content onto a television set. You can do that with Apple TV. You've got PVRs. You've also got on demand from the carriers, and then you've got services like Slingbox, where you can broadcast your cable to any mobile device. There's a cost with all of these, of course. Where would you say that QuickPlay fits into all of that, this big ecosystem?
Sure. Well, we're a business-to-business company, so we essentially work for companies that are offering a video service. So let's take a wireless company or a cable company.
Yep.
We are essentially working for that company typically, or perhaps even a device maker like a RIM or a Motorola or a Nokia.
Yep.
And we're essentially helping those guys develop the video service that they want to offer to their customers, and we're helping them do it faster, cheaper, better, to more devices at a very quick time to market. So,
okay.
We are essentially an software as a service infrastructure provider for video service companies.
So I use the Global TV app, for example. Is that powered by you guys? Are you working with those guys, or the behind the scenes?
Well, we so conceptually, yes. I think we don't. I mean, we have some global content. I don't think we don't power their specific app.
Okay.
So, an example would be if you watch the hockey game on Bell, as an example, in Canada, or in the States, if you're a Uverse mobile user, we power those services.
Okay.
We've worked with Rogers for many years, working most, on the FIFA World Cup, as an example. So we have a lot of content in our database. So I think we have connections with some 3,000 different content providers. So all the big networks in the States, we're getting movies, we're getting weather clips and sports highlights, all kinds of content. We have some 1.1 million content assets under management now in the cloud. Yeah. So if you want to build a service, you can come to us and say, QuickPlay, can you help me? We essentially provide you with APIs. So there are examples of applications where essentially a third party or another company entirely has gone and built the application, but then they're plugging into our backend to help deliver the video. So as an example, the RIM podcasting app that's on all the new RIM devices, that application was completely built by RIM, but the back end, in terms of the content management and the curation, the validation of all that content, is all done by QuickPlay.
Okay.
So we're really behind the scenes, and if you're a TV company that wants to make an app, many companies will go and do that themselves because it's relatively easy to do at that scale. But when you want to do it with hundreds or thousands of hours of content, and when you want to have multiple apps running on it, and when you're starting to realize that the encoding boxes that we bought, we need another 10 of them, and the guy that's doing the encoding now is turned into a team of 15 with managers and all kinds of stuff. That's when you're like, oh, well, maybe we could get a QuickPlay to do that for a monthly fee, essentially. That's going to be way less than what they do it in-house. So we fully expect that there'll be lots of people doing this themselves. But over time, the guys that are really serious about it and are really generating big costs by those activities at an infrastructure level will seriously look at an outsourced model like us.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, especially if this is just an add-on service. It just can't be an add-on service that's bleeding you dry, because as much as bandwidth has come down in cost, there's still a cost with streaming this content outbound to the consumer and to the provider, isn't there?
Sure, there is, but that's a big difference. I think this year, is that this is, when we started years and years ago, I think arguably this was you could argue it was a science project. People were trying it out because they could, and to some extent, it was a solution looking for a problem. Yeah. But now the problem is that there are a lot of people that want to watch their TV when they want it, and they want to watch it on all these different devices, whether it's a tablet or a connected TV, or in the future in the car. Cars will be connected. Your kids will be able to download stuff and watch it in the back seat. There's all kinds of services that can be built, and this is kind of the area that we find ourselves in.
So when you heard Steve Jobs say way back, very famously, about the iPod, that nobody in their right mind would ever want to watch anything on a 320 by 240 screen that the iPod had at the time, or the Nano or something, did you look at that and think, oh no, what are we doing? Are we in the wrong industry? Or was there ever a moment like that where you thought, this is just never going to materialize?
Well, I mean, Steve Jobs is famous for making those observations and then coming out with a product that
throwing off the competition, really, isn't it? Yeah.
So we take those utterances with a grain of salt. I mean, I think you have a hunch, you go with it, and you find both confirming and contradictory evidence. So we talk about the hype curve of mobile TV that. Much like the internet in the 90s, there was a huge set of expectations that took off, and then a decline. But really, what we looked at were the statistics of what the consumer behavior was, because that's ultimately the change that we think is driving all this. And we found steadily throughout the last few years, more and more and more people are watching longer and longer content on their portable devices. And it doesn't hurt that those devices are now, tablets, which essentially, if you hold them on your lap, give you pretty much the same percentage of a field of vision as a reasonably big TV does in your living room.
Absolutely.
Right? So I don't think there's...
you can actually watch TV lying down with a tablet on the side, right? So it enhances the experience a little bit.
So, I mean, you walk up and down the aisle of a plane these days, and you'll see that people certainly, if there's an in-plane VOD system, people are watching that, but they're also watching their portable gaming systems. They're watching their iPad or reading their Kindle or whatever. So people, there is a genuine, real consumer behavior for people to watch and consume this content on portable devices, and that's really the trend that we bet on, and that seems to be coming to fruition.
Now, do you ever see that there's going to be a Pureplay mobile, for lack of a better word, provider? Like, do you see that at some point there's going to be one company that just streams content that doesn't exist on doesn't have a cable box, isn't a Rogers or isn't a cable provider, and all they're doing is providing content through a mobile device that at some point you can beam to a dumb terminal, like you said. Do you see that happening soon?
Well, it is. I mean, it is happening for certain genres of content, and to expand the category a little bit, I mean, I gather that a huge percentage of tweets are generated from mobile devices. I can't remember the percentage, if it's 40 or 50 or whatever it is.
A big number.
So by extension, there's a massive amount of content creation that's created on mobile devices, and in many cases is being viewed on a mobile device. So it's not a huge stretch to imagine that as video gets easier to share in applications like FaceTime or the video layer of Skype that we're using today, when all that stuff gets more commonplace, there's going to be a ton of video going back and forth that is essentially created and never seen on a device that's not a portable device.
Yeah.
I would still argue that a lot of the entertainment, sort of professional entertainment content, movies and so on and so forth, works pretty well on cross platforms. I think the behavior is different, but the fundamental, the genres actually work reasonably well. So what I mean is that I think you can perfectly comfortably watch an episode, a TV episode, a half hour, an hour TV episode, even a movie on a tablet. Because it's a portable device, you may watch it in a different way. You may watch it, sitting up for half the time and then, move to a different room or do something different.
Yep.
You may pause and resume several times. You may pause and resume across different devices. So, you're watching it and then, you end up somewhere and can watch it on, continue watching the movie on the TV. So we have definitely seen, and our services had the most success. Our services have had the most success when we've offered the kind of content that people are familiar with from their traditional viewing habits.
Yeah.
So there was a trend a while back of kind of mobisodes and of content specifically created for mobile devices. There was an argument that you had to shoot it in a different way, and there was more close-ups and so on and so forth. And that content hasn't taken off. I don't know if it will. It's entirely possible, but from where we sit, it's the same content but different behavior.
Still brands, but more consumer choice, obviously, for where they watch it, when they watch it. And I think that's one of the biggest complaints. Is that obviously we sometimes can't get in front of the television at a specific time, and sporting events is the one thing I think that keeps a lot of people tied to their cable companies, and because when you cut the cord, you oftentimes you'll lose, say, the NFL, because I know Major League Baseball does a great job of streaming their stuff, and so does the NHL. But that's what keeps a lot of people tied to the other 700 channels that they don't need because of that one or two that they do. But this is an evolution, obviously. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a little bit about you guys, for example. you know, when you look a little bit forward, what do you see for QuickPlay? Is it something that this is a platform in every single you know, company? So every content provider, every carrier, and every cable provider and device manufacturer, or do you at some point see you guys becoming an aggregator of content, for example? Could that happen? And you guys charge a service fee for that and license the content?
Yeah, I mean, that's not the plan. We absolutely are a technical aggregator of content, in the sense that we have a lot of integrations with content and can, you know, given the correct permissions, get it out to any device at any time, you know, any service. But there are some 400 million set-top boxes in the world, and you know, we see literally every household that has one of those is going to need some sort of a TV. You know, there's going to be an extension either by the companies that are currently offering those boxes or by their competitors, that all those services are going to go to tablets and smartphones and connected TVs and so on and so forth. So there's just a mammoth market opportunity for QuickPlay and others, because we're not going to be able to grab it all. We want to, but we see a huge opportunity in the years to come. And you know, people love their TV, and there's going to be all kinds of different ways to watch it, and we think we can help enable some of those.
So what about in the early days when you approach somebody like a carrier or a provider or any of these guys that their content is they're still stuck in that mode where the content is what generates the revenue, it's what generates the subscriptions and advertising as well, and you walk in and say, hey, listen, we're QuickPlay Media. We want to take your content and enable it to be streamed on anything that anybody carries with them. What was their reaction? It must have been. Were they taken aback, or did they embrace it at the beginning?
No, I mean, we were lucky to connect with some real visionaries at some of these companies that kind of got that. And really what's been happening in the meantime is the technology has been improving to the point where it becomes a much more fluid experience. But the other big thing is the rights, because television rights, movie rights, they're sold
geographically, aren't they?
They're sold geographically. They're sold by technological platform as well. So they're sold with a great deal of attention paid to windowing, in terms of, you know, this is first run, this is the second airing, this is, you know, this is the syndication, this is the DVD rights or Blu-ray rights, whatever it may be. So that's the you know, that's been, I think, the thing that has to develop. And in a way, it's a good balance, because the technology moves far ahead, but for the rights to move, there actually has to be a business case, right? So there's no, you know, until there's a critical mass and there's enough interest, and, you know, it's worthwhile getting these rights done. Things are very slow, but now you're seeing with the TV Everywhere deals in the U.S., with movies going cross-platform, and just in general, as TV providers look for ways to work on the digital platforms, and not see their business go to zero, as has happened in some other media. They are really getting those deals done, and as we said earlier, it's no longer a science project. This is an important part of a lot of people's business plans, and there's millions of dollars at stake, and there's, you know, hundreds of millions of viewers potentially who are changing behaviors and looking for different ways. And I think, you know, some of the great things about Apple and Netflix, that they've got very, very great amounts of attention paid to user experience. And I think that they, you know, they are setting some really high standards in terms of what an app can do, what the overall, you know, user friendliness should be. And, you know, a lot of traditional TV providers, they may have a VOD service, but the interface doesn't look as cool as what's on Netflix. And so they're going to look at that, but they're going to be able to move and say, all right, we get it. Now we're going to move seriously in that space, and take a more application-based approach, and a more sort of perhaps web-centric approach or mobile app-centric approach. So there's some very neat dynamics in the industry, and there's going to be some very, very interesting competition. But I think consumers ultimately are going to have a lot of choice, and we'll, as we always do, we'll vote with our feet.
It's so true if we have the ability to, because I know there are a lot of people who talk about that, but there's ask them to change or modify their behaviors, and not a lot of people do, right? We've seen this slowly where people are no longer getting home phones. They're just relying on their cell phones for their phone number, carry it with them wherever they go. And I just wonder if that happens with cable, and this is the beginning of that transition. And you brought up some great points there about certainly about limiting content geographically, and then because that's the advertising footprint geographically. I mean, in Canada, we don't get the U.S. Super Bowl ads because they have Canadian providers have relationships that they had to obviously provide those ads for. But when that gets worked out, I just think that we're going to start to see maybe a slow transition to, as you said, the terminal being a big television or a big screen, and any big screen, and the small device being the one that controls it all, which would be an interesting world to live in, I think. Boy, would it ever.
Yeah, I think it would, absolutely. And, it's Bill Gates had a great quote that, change tends to be, underestimated in the long term, overestimated in the short term. And it's a bit of what you're seeing. I think there's some fundamental consumer behavior that is perhaps now starting at the margins. And I would just say that, let's look at consumers using tablets as consumption devices. I mean, the tablet, the iPad came out last year. There's however many, 19 million of them, or whatever the number is. And so it's a tiny fraction.
Yeah.
But tiny fraction of the U.S. or Canadian or world population certainly has them. But let's keep an eye on those over the next 10 years and see what the consumer behavior is. And our bet certainly is that there's a lot of video consumed on those things.
Yeah, I would say it's what I have young boys, and we consume obviously quite a lot of television. But we consume a lot of on-demand video on my iPad. Things like hurricane videos that you can call up and watch at any point in time when they're learning about hurricanes. Right? It's just in time video, we'll say. And there's a library available anywhere. We could be sitting anywhere and watch that, which is pretty powerful if you think about that in context. And I really think that's not going to slow down. So there's the only difference, though, is that, as you said, the premium content is what most of us are looking for on these devices, and so we're getting bits and pieces of it. But certainly, this is going to evolve as we go, as this becomes more and more, I think, palatable to everybody. That these devices are consumption devices as well as productivity devices.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
So last question, just around what you guys are doing. You guys have raised, you've got some premium investors inside of the company. So, was it a challenge? Walk me through that process. Did you set out and get investment and then start the company, or did you start the company, build an idea, and then find the investment, or did they come to you? How did that process work for you guys?
Sure. Well, I mean, I can, I think I can speak to it generally, as far as where I've sat, and I think, it's been cool to be part of a startup and see. But I think the big thing is you do start with an idea. We were fortunate in that we were able to get some customers to test stuff out right away, and I think that was. I think for Wayne Prabhu, our CEO and founder, that was a key thing for him. It's like, it's one thing to have this on a whiteboard, but let's see if we can actually get people to pay for it. And of course, you start very, very small. And then, when you're talking about the venture capital world, it's people are looking for interesting technology in a market that's growing at a huge rate. And so we were able to draw the line between, essentially the explosion of mobile data services and how those would be supplanted and ultimately, perhaps taken over by the explosion of video over these networks. And we were fortunate to have some investors that, essentially wanted to go along for that ride. And General Catalyst, who are a Boston-based VC, have a lot of expertise in the video space. So they've made investments in some of the web video businesses that and as well had some expertise on wireless. So they're a very, very, very good fit.
Yep.
And our Canadian VCs as well have been very involved in some of the Canadian wireless success stories, RIM and so forth and so on. So
yeah, JL Albright, they run the RIM fund, don't they? The
indeed, yeah.
Fund, yeah. So
indeed.
Well, and was it a challenge? Do you think, like, for a lot of startups out there who are looking for revenue or looking for investment from VC, especially in Canada, it's lukewarm to say the best inside of Canada at any given point in time in terms of the number of investments that happen. But you guys are in a disruptive space with some huge incumbents. When we're talking about carriers, it's a longer play for you to get in and entrenched and then start generating revenue. Was it a challenge, or were these guys they saw this just like you did? This was you guys were brothers in arms. Well,
I think in general, yeah, it's been it's been a very shared vision. Obviously you have you always want to grow faster and stronger and better and on a better timetable and so on. And we started this early, and perhaps it was too early. I'm not really sure. You can't sort of go back and you can't jump into the same river twice type thing. But
yep.
On the other hand, here we are, and I think we're quite fortunate. Because we've always been a cloud-based service, and cloud-based services are very, I think, both trendy but also important now in terms of the way that IT is going to change in the future.
Yep.
Also, our background's in mobile, and so far, the tablet OSs of the most influential tablets are mobile-based. So you've got iOS on the Apple side and Android on the
the other guys,
side, I suppose. Most of the other tablets that are seriously considered to be making inroads in this space are Android-powered right now.
Yep.
And there will be others from RIM and so on, but the ones that are on the market are Android. So again, the hype curve waxes and wanes, and you kind of, I think we just try to keep our heads down and work steadily. And we've worked for a long time to build up some customers in the U.S. and to keep our great customers in Canada. And for us now, the focus is definitely turning overseas. So
yeah,
I've been to Hong Kong a couple times in the past year. Our CEO's been there a number of times, and we've got a couple of services that are going to be launching there, and it's fascinating to see both the similarities and the differences between the two markets. And I would say one of the interesting observations about Hong Kong is that really it's a very mobile society, and that people just the smartphones and the tablets is just like instant adoption.
Yes.
And people are very natural about using media services on those devices. And I'm not sure the PC had as much influence necessarily in terms of video as it has in North America. And so in a way, they're an interesting case where we're kind of going right from the TV and hopscotching right to the tablet.
Yeah, you can definitely see that, and for all intents and purposes, yeah, they're used to smaller screens to begin with, and I'd even say on the television side, consumption wasn't as high as it is in North America. And so moving into a mobile world, that makes absolute sense. It's almost like and their devices are so far advanced, and their networks are a little bit more advanced, and we're catching up. But really, they've got a number of years on us when it comes to that stuff.
Well, but then the interesting thing is, I mean, yes, there are a lot of solutions, especially on the broadcast side. So you had mobile video services in South Korea and Japan and elsewhere. But what's been really interesting for us, and why people are interested into talking to us there, is that the smartphones that have really been, let's say, forged in the crucible of North American consumer market, they're now very, very big, obviously, everywhere in the world, particularly in places like Hong Kong and Singapore and so on. And so expertise in those OSs is now at a real premium.
Huh.
And in a way, that's kind of the version 2.0 of mobile video services is smartphone and tablet-powered services that connect to not just internet-based services, but also link to people's IPTV services or satellite services or so on.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's such a global playing field that you guys are involved in because television is ubiquitous and universal. And when you start to play around with it, you think about the potentials, and they're huge. This is an industry that I've read many articles from Om Malik and his team at GigaOM who talk about NIDC up here in Canada and talk about the disruption that's going on in television. And I love to see a Canadian company in the middle of this, poking fun, not fun, but poking at the incumbents and saying, listen, this is the new way to do it. And you talk about visionary. You guys are on the same business model that you started 7 years ago, before mobile became, I think 7 years ago was the first year that it was supposed to be the year of mobile. So you guys, well, you might not. It's certainly a revolution that's about to happen. You've been waiting for 7 years, and I think that's it's great that you guys are still in the same business model and now expanding outside of North America. All that to say is that it's pretty exciting time.
It is indeed.
Well, listen, Mark, I really appreciate you sticking around to do this and to offer some great insight, not only to what you guys are doing at QuickPlay, but also to the way that this industry is shaping. And I don't know anybody else or any other company that is better suited to have this conversation with. So I definitely do appreciate you sticking around and having this conversation and enlightening us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
So where can people find out a little bit more about what you guys are doing?
Well, QuickPlay.com. We're also on Twitter at QuickPlay Media, so you can follow us on Twitter. And there's a pretty good set of activities around the world. So for people that are interested in this space, we definitely try to pick out some of the great little tidbits of news around the world and share those around. So hopefully people will follow us on Twitter and check us out on the web.
I love it. So, again, Mark, thank you so much. I've been speaking with Mark Hyland, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing at a company here, actually in Canada, in Toronto, called QuickPlay Media. So go to quickplay.com and check them out. And at QuickPlay Media is their Twitter account. And again, as always, I thank Mark for sticking around and having this conversation. I thank you guys for watching and listening wherever you are. This has been another episode of Untethered.tv. Thank you so much.